let's get right into the 10 best centers in this year's NBA draft class. And I'd like to hear, before we start today's video, guys, who do you think is the best center in this year's class? We have to my left, maybe your right, Khaman Maluach, Derik Queen, Thomas Sorber, Joan Beringer. Is it Joan or Jean? I'm pretty sure it's Beringer. I'm like 99. It's French. So that's just going off of what I've heard and intuition. Playing in Slovenia, but a Frenchman. Danny Wolf, not related to Joe Wolf, even though he is the son of Joe Wolf. Kind of like a offensive point forward. Ryan Kalkbrenner, Johni Broome, Vlad Goldin. Can we just say for a second, if anybody remembers when Vlad Goldin first came into college to what he is now, might be one of the most remarkable turnarounds in all of college basketball or even prospect development. Maxime Raynaud, I know some people will say, well, he's a 7'1" power forward. I really think he would be like a switch big, probably play center just because of like his size and like ability. I think he can play center. And I think the last guy, the Australian Mason Plumlee. Mason Plumlee is my girlfriend's favorite player. We got our chap by the name of, is it Alex Condon? Condon. Like I'm saying condom, but with an N. I don't want to be disrespectful, even though I kind of like right there, somebody's probably going to be like, that was so rude of you. I didn't mean it like that. Now let's get right into it. We're going to talk Khaman Maluach first. And this is a guy that I think everybody should be aware of. Now, he was heralded coming into college out of the NBA Academy as potentially the next Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's not. He's unfortunately, he's going to be, I think, a solid, at the bare minimum, upper level, I'd say, starter, maybe borderline all-star. He could probably be an all-star. I think it's all dependent on him maybe having to take a little bit of, here we go. I had this ready, but in reality, I didn't. So let's talk about our man, Khaman Maluach. By the way, I interviewed him a while ago at the G League Showcase when he was on the BAL team. This is the little interview stuff is actually me interviewing him. He was one of the first NBA players in person that I interviewed, or prospects. My apology. I had done players before. Now, Khaman Maluach. What do we look at when we see a guy like him? I had a scout tell me, multiple scouts go like a DeAndre Jordan, Rudy Gobert, and right here I'd say the way the consensus is, he's probably going to have a career, best case scenario, like a DeAndre Jordan, hyper athletic guy who's going to be scoring 70% from the field, dunk everything, be one of the best rebounders in the league, and maybe have a shot blocking ability and rim protection between DeAndre and Rudy Gobert. Saying that he's going to be an uber athletic version of Rudy Gobert would be the best case scenario. And obviously, I think anybody who is, a fan of basketball would love to have a guy that is Rudy Gobert defensively with DeAndre Jordan's athleticism, because then you'd be like, oh, this guy might be everything that we'd hope Rudy Gobert could do, except I don't know if he has the hands like DeAndre Jordan, and he might be, nothing against Rudy. He's had a great career, but he isn't the swiftest of hands or the most fluid of scores. But Khaman Maluach is a towering rim protector who has the chase down block ability and the rare mobility. So he has the chase down block ability and the rare mobility for a guy at 7'2". He's going to be able to just block things out like he's Manute Bol. And his wingspan and ability to move allows him to cover ground, to be kind of like similar to what we see Victor Wembanyama. Obviously not saying he's going to be Victor Wembanyama, but we've seen with Donovan Clingan, Wemby, and a bunch of other guys. Just the ability to alter shots without fouling and just contesting is huge. And he's shown some touch on the short roll jumper, but I think he's mainly just going to be like a lob threat dunk guy who's going to finish everything within 5 feet and just not make many mistakes. He's been praised. When I talked to Coach Shire when he put after the game, he just said for a guy who just started playing basketball in the last 5 years, he's one of the most coachable guys he's ever had the honor of coaching. So that's always great to hear. All right, let's talk about the polished low post scorer that is Derik Queen. I think Derik Queen is one of the most interesting players in this draft because he could be really good or he could be just like a role player, which is there's nothing wrong with that. He's got an old school low post scorer type mentality. I've said multiple, his footwork and his touch. If he develops a hook shot, man, he's just Al Jefferson at this point. Like and that's like a compliment because Al was able to what Derik does, 6'9", 6'10", to be able to finish over larger defenders. And he's got good size. I think he needs to get in better shape, no offense, but he sees the floor well as a passer. He can pass out of the elbow post. Even like we've said earlier, is he's someone who has an offensive skill set that could develop into an all-star. Like I've said, an Al Jefferson meets Julius Randle switch big, who, if he can tighten up his rim protection and continue to develop as a shooter, which, you know, he shot 20% on 1 attempt a game, but shot almost 80%, 77% from the free throw line, which we all know free throw shooting is indicative of your ability, potentially, they say, of stretching out down deep. Now, the other thing is he's going to be a 21-year-old rookie in December. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, that shouldn't matter. If he's going to be good, like, this guy does look like he could be the Black Alperen Şengün at times. And there's nothing wrong with him being 21. But him being 21, and if you're an executive and we're talking about just potential, you want a guy who's going to be 22 years old when he hits the age of extension. And I think that's the biggest thing right there. Is Derik, our man, going to be worth it at 25, 26 years old to give the rookie max? That's the big question. I don't want to be rude. I like the kid, but I like Thomas Sorber more. I know 2 scouts that I talked to for a team that's in the Eastern Conference playoffs currently said Sorber's been a guy that they've liked since not the playoffs, but since he was in high school. And they are a team that I know that they're in the market for a big, but for me, I think he's an immediate backup big or a complementary big for any team. I've seen a lot of people say, because the expectation is Maluach, and I don't know if Derik Queen would work with Trae Young, but I've seen a lot of Sorber with Onyeka Okongwu projections. A lot of Danny Wolf's the other one, just a big with Onyeka Okongwu, and I actually really like that. And I think another team, the Mavericks, teams that already kind of have a center in place but might have some flaws. And Sorber is just broad, dude. This guy's huge. He's got soft hands. He can finish inside. He's able to either play back to basket or be a guy who can, operate out the elbow, hit a small jumper from there. Got great rebounding abilities, double, potential. And he's more of a drop coverage big. However, worst case scenario, he's the 6'10" version of Xavier Tillman, and that's no shame to Xavier. Xavier's great. But Thomas could be sometimes a little bit slow of foot. But for me, I think his passing is underrated, his ability to play defense, and the thing he does great, which I think people don't realize is an underrated skill, is being big when he sets screens. If you're able to get wide and make people have to run around you, I think that's going to keep you in the league, even if you're not a great offensive or defensive player. Now, the shooting and offensive creation and defense will be what decides if he goes from being just a long-time backup player or a starter in this league. Now, Joan Beringer at first was going to be one of my big sleepers, but it seems like everybody is in on him. And he's a guy that kind of like a longer Onyeka Okongwu. And I think that might be like at first what I thought. I'm getting told he's 6'11", and the way that this kid plays is he's a willing shot blocker. He loves just to run up. He knows he's athletic, and I love to watch players who know that they're athletic. And at 18, going to be turning 19, 5-5 is what he averaged, but he's playing Slovenia. He's athletic. He's a rim running big. All right. A guy whose offense might not ever grow outside the paint. He might just, at best case scenario, be a Mitchell Robinson-esque big, just slam everything down. But the fact that he's as physical as he is, and I know it's not the best league in Europe, but it's not a bottom tier league in Europe like Hoku was playing in. And I think his hustle and his motor are what you're betting on when you look at a kid who's doing this. And the fact that he's energetic, and we've seen what Dereck Lively and Khalil Ware have been able to do for playoff teams. I'm going to take the fact that his hands, his verticality are going to be able to translate. Yeah, he remains a little bit raw in positional defense, and he's going to be a guy who's going to overcommit and bite, but he has all the traits you want from a high-end backup to a guy who easily could be a Nick Claxton, Onyeka Okongwu-esque big, Mitchell Robinson type, like in that grouping. I'd take that because of the athleticism, the motor, and the length. I'm cool with that. That's a guy that I'm going to take usually in a draft, especially if I have another big. Again, a lot of the bigs in this draft are bigs you want if you already have a big in place that they're going to complement your big that you have. And I think this is another guy who is great if you already have somebody in place. Again, we've talked the Mavericks, the Hawks are teams that are guys to consider. So keep an eye out for that. I think the Heat did it last year, so they're out on that. But there's plenty of teams that if we go ahead and look in the market, especially once we start going through the playoffs and have an idea of what moves are being made, I think teams like the Suns, people have said the Grizzlies should get another big. So have people said about the Magic. I think the Wizards are going to be in the market for a big. Teams that have guys who are going to be up for extension that they might not want to pay. That's where I think are all possible, where you just need to keep your eyes open. And I think it's really a guy like Danny Wolf is somebody who, if you have a defensive big, and this is me not trying to be rude, Danny Wolf, look, I think he's going to be guaranteed a high-level role player. I would say him to become a starter in the league, it's going to take him to develop a bit more defensive skills. He's going to obviously, day one, going to be mismatch hunted, but the passing, the ability to space the floor, the corner threes, the fact that he can initiate the offense either from the high post or from the elbow as a big. I've said it before, he's sort of like a offensive Kyle Anderson without a 7-foot version of Kyle Anderson without the defense. Like, he's an average athlete. He's got the skills and toolkit to be good in terms of helping a second unit just run and keeping the offense flowing, a willing rebounder. However, in a league that in transition and in space, you're thinking that best case scenario defensively, and I think Luke Cornett's way more athletic than Danny Wolf. Danny Wolf was not just under 10 rebounds, 13 points. He's got the skill and the pass first ability that you want and can be a primary ball handler in college. I think obviously he's going to be a secondary playmaker at best. But I think the fact that you can't keep him in late game situations, and he's not going to be able to contain the Joel Embiids, the Jokic's of the world, the Jonas Valanciunas, the Sabonis's, like even Khalil Ware or Derek Lively or Daniel Gafford are going to dunk on him. Like, that's not me trying to say, oh, he's just a white Jewish guy. Hey, fellow Jew right here, like part of the tribe. It's just in the NBA, he, I think, is going to be able to work in spurts, but it's the fact that he's not, like, moving over here to Ryan Kalkbrenner in a difference. Like, Ryan Kalkbrenner is a bit longer and bigger. He's a drop coverage big, old school style. A guy that, if you did not watch college basketball the last 4 years, then I would say Ryan Kalkbrenner is sort of like Brook Lopez with maybe less offense, skinnier, but I think moves a bit better. 19 points, 9 rebounds, shot 34% from 3. And yeah, you're looking at a poor man's Brook Lopez. I think that's to say it. A 4-year rim protector, 4-year defensive player of the year in his conference. He's actually got a little bit of passing ability. If there's a cutter in the dunker spot or backdoor, he'll find him, especially guys coming off of, secondary actions, he'll find it. And he can space the floor with the corner 3, I wouldn't say initiate offense, but connect offense and finish plays, as we just said. And to me, it's the anchoring, the drop coverage, the ability to contest at the rim. 7'1", I bet you 7'4", 7'5" wingspan. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me right now, but just the size that he has there, he's going to be an NBA backup big day one. Yeah, will people in pick and roll situations, his foot speed will depend if he's Neemias Queta or if he's going to be poor man. Like, best case scenario, he's the backup version of Brook Lopez, end of the career, or Brook Lopez with a little bit more flight of foot. Worst case, he's Neemias Queta. I think Neemias is a little bit bigger, but I don't think that's like really a bad career to say if it pans out that way. Now, let's move on to Maxime Raynaud, who I think if we look at Maxime, he's an interesting guy because the offense, baby. He's a guy who can end up being kind of like, I don't want to say the Naz Reid of this class. And what I mean by that, Naz went undrafted. But Raynaud, my apology, Maxime Raynaud is a guy who ended up developing into one of the better college players in basketball. He's able to knock down the pick and pop, be a trailing big man. He'll finish at the rim. He's got the lateral quickness to guard both 4s and 5s. He's I'd argue, just as good as Vlad Goldin and Johni Broome as drop coverage bigs. He's not as good as Ryan Kalkbrenner, but he's able to do a similar thing and is a better offensive player and shooter. Can pass, can kind of be an off the bench scorer. And the fact that he has a true face-up game to knock down jumpers and potentially be a day one backup big who can play both the 4 and the 5, I think that's the biggest intrigue with him. And he's absolutely phenomenal. I had a buddy tell me beginning of the year, he was like, he's going to be player of the year. He's like, just watch it. And he's a guy that will surprise you. 1.5 blocks a game, 11 rebounds, almost 20 points, 47% from the field and 35% from 3. Maxime Raynaud, this is the guy you want to take if you're a team that's looking for a multi-positional big. So 4 and 5 switch big who can guard both of those positions and give you a little bit of offense and give you some defense. Also from France. So if it doesn't work out here, dude goes overseas, enjoys life. Like, he's going to have a good one. He's going to be good regardless. Next up, let's talk about a guy that I actually started to fall in love with during the tournament. I didn't think much of him, and this was really the Australian Mason Plumlee, Alex Condon, right? A guy, I think in the NBA, people want him to play at 5. He's just going to be an undersized 5, even though he's 6'11". He's the typical, steel lunch pail, pull yourself up by the bootstrap, hardworking Aussie. Yeah, he averaged just under 11 points, 7.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 1 steal, 1.3 blocks. He shot 33% almost from the field, just under 50%. A guy that the people are going to be like, none of his stats stand out. He just does everything. He hustles. He helps make the team better. And I think that's the type of player more and more you're seeing be the backup bigs. Aaron Baines, Daniel Tice, they've made careers out of that. Look at Jock Landale. Like, there's just being a pro. And I think he's somebody who can, at the beginning of his career, I think he'll be able to play a little bit of 4, especially if he stretches the floor. But as I said, have that Mason Plumlee athleticism, be a guy who can maybe stretch the floor a little bit, definitely gonna be able to be a connected piece in secondary or tertiary facilitator as a passer, and can switch onto smaller players and be a guy who can be a 5. I think definitely once he bulks up, he'll on the latter half of his career, he'll be a full-time 5. But right now, I think he's a guy who has the athleticism to play the 4, but I think really they'll try it, but I think at the end of the day, he's going to be a pure 5. And it screams Mason Plumlee for me in my head when I watch him. Fantastic guy, and someone that we've talked about this repeatedly. If you have a center in place already, he's the one that you want to bring in. And he's somebody that I think Dallas, the Grizzlies, could look into, especially if they need a third guy. Now, Johni Broome was someone that I legitimately think could be the defensive version of Naz Reid, as he's going to be a second round pick, maybe undrafted. I could be wrong. I doubt he goes in the first. He's a physical interior force. He's got nice touch inside. He got a great drop step, I think. He has the strength and the positioning skills to rebound over people, and his athleticism and explosiveness is average at best, but he's a guy that I think his career is going to be a tough, reliable big who could be a spot starter, bridge starter, whatever you want to call him, but a reliable backup who's going to come in, give you defense, play hard near the basket, make people just compete for everything. And for someone who averaged 19 points, 11 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 blocks, the reason why I think he could be the Reid is if it all pans out, he's a guy who could end up having a career being a team's starter that develops on a good team, on a contending team that needs him to be their backup. And then down the road, when he hits free agency, he's built up an offensive repertoire that he goes and gets the opportunity and just is able to prove that he can be a commodity. And he's just someone that when I saw him at the combine, he dominated. He was big. And I think that always when you see players, especially ones that dominate the combine and then go back, you have a lot of faith just because of their work ethic and everything that they've been able to prove since the year that you first initially saw them. So that's my 2 cents on that one. And the last one is Vlad. I don't know if you guys have seen Vlad or heard of him, but dude, when he first came into college basketball, you didn't have faith that he was going to figure it out. When he would rebound, it looked like he was playing volleyball. And the way that he's grown as a basketball player is fantastic. I've heard multiple people just really, really speak highly of him and believe that he's going to be someone who is going to have the ability to contribute immediately as a reserve big. And I agree with that. I think at worst, you're looking at maybe like an Ariel Huckforty situation where you're like, okay, if the glass has to be broken, he can come in his first year. I think you want him to go in the G and spend some time there just conditioning, getting in acclimated. But the Ruski, 17 points, 7 rebounds, He's someone who's going to be able to protect the rim. And I think at the end of the day, he's just hard-nosed, gritty, somebody that, yes, he is kind of a traditional post player, especially on the defensive and offensive side, but the willingness to go out there, block shots, protect the rim, set screens, compete on the glass, and do everything that needs to be done to help his team win doesn't go unnoticed lightly by teams. And I think that's something that people need to realize, why he's going to be someone that I personally think teams are going to be calling if they need another big. And especially if you're a team like the Pelicans, that you're going to probably have Carlo, Matikovic, and Yves Messi. And if you're not like confident that you're going to get yourself an option in free agency, I think the biggest thing is doing what I just said and getting yourself a guy like Vlad Goldin. Now, I realized after I'd made this initial graphic, I moved it, Maxime, then Alex, then Johni, and then Vlad. And I have it as the old way, so we changed it up. But let me hear your thoughts on that one. And yeah, we're going to go on to the next position, and that's going to be power forward. So to me, I think power forward is going to be one of those classes that people are also going to be like, well, Cyro, is that how you're considering power forwards? And I think this is why later we'll have the whole decision or debacle